The private jet had just touched down at Miami International Airport when Marcus Whitmore heard the small voice behind him. He was reviewing acquisition documents, his mind already racing toward the merger meeting scheduled in 2 hours, when the flight attendant's concerned tone made him look up. "Sir, my mom didn't wake up," a little girl said, standing in the aisle with tears streaming down her freckled cheeks. Marcus felt his blood run cold. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a pink sweater with a unicorn on it, her brown hair pulled into 2 messy ponytails. Behind her, slumped in seat 12A, was a woman in her early 30s, motionless, her head tilted against the window. "Show me now," Marcus commanded, already unbuckling his seatbelt and moving down the aisle. His security detail started to follow, but he held up a hand. Something about the little girl's terrified expression cut through every protective protocol. Marcus Whitmore wasn't accustomed to feeling helpless. At 42, he'd built Whitmore Industries from a single tech patent into a multinational empire worth $8 billion. He'd negotiated with presidents, faced down hostile takeovers, and survived a plane crash that killed his co-founder. But standing beside seat 12A, looking at the unconscious woman and her daughter's desperate face, he felt utterly powerless. "What's your name?" he asked the girl gently, kneeling to her eye level while checking the woman's pulse. It was there, faint, but steady. "Penny," she whispered. "Penny Morrison. That's my mom, Jessica. She said she just needed to sleep, but we landed and she won't wake up, and I tried shaking her, but it's okay, Penny. You did the right thing by getting help." Marcus looked up at his head of security, David. "Call an ambulance, now, and get the airport medical team here immediately." As David barked orders into his phone, Marcus noticed the woman's purse had fallen into the aisle. A prescription bottle had rolled out, half hidden under the seat in front. He picked it up carefully. Hydrocodone. The label showed a date from 3 months ago, but the bottle was nearly full. "Penny, does your mom take medicine?" he asked softly. The girl nodded, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "She hurt her back at work. She cleans offices at night, but she said the pills made her too sleepy, so she stopped taking them. She only took one today because her back was really hurting." Marcus's jaw tightened. One pill shouldn't do this, unless... He checked the bottle again, his mind racing through possibilities. The prescription was legitimate, but something felt wrong. The airport medical team arrived within minutes, followed closely by paramedics. As they worked to stabilize Jessica Morrison, Marcus found himself unable to walk away. He should have been in his limousine by now, heading to the Brickell Avenue boardroom where 12 executives waited. Instead, he stood in the aisle of his private jet, watching a little girl's world potentially fall apart. "We need to transport her immediately," the lead paramedic announced. "Possible overdose or adverse reaction. Her vitals are concerning." "I'm going with her," Penny declared, her small voice surprisingly firm despite her tears. "Sweetie, you'll need to wait here while we contact a family member," the paramedic began. "No!" Penny's scream was pure terror. "I can't lose her. She's all I have. My daddy died, and if Mommy dies too, I'll be alone." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He saw himself in that moment, 9 years old, watching his own mother being loaded into an ambulance after his father's rage had gone too far. He'd been alone then, terrified, certain his world was ending. "She's coming with me," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "I'll ensure she gets to the hospital with her mother." The paramedic looked ready to protest, but something in Marcus's expression, or perhaps his obvious wealth and authority, made the man reconsider. "Are you family? I'm Marcus Whitmore, and I'm making myself responsible for this child until her mother wakes up. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with my legal team, but you're wasting time this woman doesn't have." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the back of his limousine with a traumatized 7-year-old, following an ambulance to Miami General Hospital. David had postponed the merger meeting with a vague excuse about a family emergency. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He had no family. He'd made sure of that after his divorce 5 years ago. No entanglements, no vulnerabilities, no one to lose. Yet here he was, holding the hand of a stranger's daughter while she sobbed into his $1,000 suit jacket. "Tell me about your mom," he said, trying to distract Penny from her fear. "She works really hard, Penny sniffled. 2 jobs. She cleans offices at night and works at a diner during the day. She says we're saving up so I can go to a good school. She's really smart. She used to go to college before I was born, but she had to quit to take care of me. Where were you coming from today? North Carolina. We went to visit my grandma, but she was really mean to Mommy. She said Mommy ruined her life by having me and marrying my daddy. Mommy cried on the way to the airport. She never cries in front of me, but I heard her in the bathroom. Marcus felt a familiar anger building in his chest. He'd met too many people who destroyed their children with words as sharp as knives. His own father had been a master of that particular cruelty. At the hospital, chaos erupted when Jessica Morrison's condition deteriorated. The doctors rushed her into emergency treatment while Marcus stood in the hallway, still holding Penny's hand. A social worker appeared, asking questions, making notes, eyeing Marcus with obvious suspicion. Mr. Whitmore, I need to understand the relationship here. There is no relationship, Marcus interrupted. I was on the same flight. The child needed help. I provided it. When her mother wakes up, I'll leave. But even as he said the words, he knew he was lying. Something about this situation had hooked into him, refusing to let go. An hour later, a doctor emerged with a grim expression. Are you the family? I'm all she has right now, Marcus replied, keeping Penny close. What's her condition? Mrs. Morrison is stable, but barely. It wasn't the pain medication. Someone replaced her hydrocodone with a dangerous combination of sedatives and muscle relaxers. If the flight had been any longer, or if you hadn't gotten her help when you did, she would have died. We're running a full talk screen, but I've already contacted the police. This was attempted murder. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus looked down at Penny, whose face had gone white with confusion and terror. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Find out who did this, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of billions and the promise of retribution. Spare no expense. I want answers, and I want them now. Because someone had tried to kill Jessica Morrison, and they'd nearly succeeded. The question was why, and whether they'd try again. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Marcus had arranged for Jessica Morrison to be moved to a private suite on the top floor, the kind usually reserved for celebrities and foreign dignitaries. It had been 6 hours since they'd arrived, and she still hadn't regained consciousness. Penny had finally fallen asleep on the small couch, exhausted from crying, clutching a stuffed elephant that Marcus's assistant had purchased from the hospital gift shop. Marcus stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, listening to David's preliminary report. What he was hearing made his blood boil. The prescription bottle was tampered with professionally, David explained. Someone with medical knowledge replaced the contents. We pulled security footage from the pharmacy where Mrs. Morrison filled the prescription 3 months ago. Nothing suspicious there, but we also checked her apartment building in Fort Lauderdale. Sir, you need to see this footage. Send it to my secure tablet, Marcus commanded. Moments later, he was watching grainy security video from Jessica Morrison's apartment complex. The timestamp showed yesterday morning, just hours before her flight. A man in a maintenance uniform entered the building, but his movements were wrong, too purposeful, too direct. He went straight to apartment 3B, Jessica's unit, and used a key to enter. He emerged 12 minutes later, walking casually, but Marcus noticed he carried a small pharmacy bag that he hadn't had going in. We enhanced the image, David continued. The uniform is fake. You can see the logo is slightly off. We're running facial recognition now, but sir, there's more. Jessica Morrison's late husband, Patrick Morrison, died 2 years ago in what was ruled an accidental drowning. He was a commercial fisherman who went overboard during a storm. Marcus's instincts, honed by years of sniffing out corporate fraud, tingled. You don't believe it was an accident. Patrick Morrison had a life insurance policy worth $200,000. The beneficiary was his brother, Travis Morrison. According to the policy terms, if Patrick died while married, the money would go to his spouse and child. But if Jessica died within 3 years of Patrick's death, before remarrying, the money would default to the next of kin, Travis. Where is Travis Morrison now? That's the interesting part. He filed a claim on the insurance money last month, arguing that Jessica had abandoned Penny and should be declared an unfit mother, making him the rightful guardian and beneficiary. The claim was denied. Jessica has been an exemplary parent. No history of neglect, no criminal record, multiple jobs to support her daughter. The insurance company's investigation actually commended her. Marcus looked at the sleeping child on the couch, then at the unconscious woman in the bed. A picture was forming, and it was uglier than any corporate espionage he'd ever uncovered. "Find Travis Morrison," Marcus ordered. "I want to know everywhere he's been in the last week, everyone he's talked to, every dollar he's spent, and get me the best criminal attorney in Florida. Have them here within the hour." As he ended the call, a soft voice spoke from the bed. "Where's Penny?" Marcus turned sharply. Jessica Morrison's eyes were open, dark brown, exhausted, but alert. She tried to sit up and immediately winced, her hand going to the IV in her arm. "Don't move," Marcus said, approaching the bed. "You're in the hospital. Your daughter is safe. She's sleeping right there." Jessica's eyes found Penny, and tears immediately began streaming down her face. "What happened?" "The last thing I remember is being on the plane, and then everything got so heavy, I couldn't keep my eyes open." "Someone poisoned you," Marcus said bluntly. He'd learned long ago that sugarcoating the truth helped no one. "They replaced your pain medication with a lethal combination of drugs. You would have died if Penny hadn't gotten help." The color drained from Jessica's face. "That's impossible. Who would—" She stopped abruptly, and Marcus saw recognition flash in her eyes. "You know who did this," he stated. Jessica's hand trembled as she pushed herself up against the pillows. "I need to leave. I need to take Penny and disappear." "You don't understand. Then help me understand. Because right now, the police are treating this as an attempted murder investigation, and whoever tried to kill you will almost certainly try again. Unless you want Penny to grow up without a mother, you need to tell me everything." For a long moment, Jessica just stared at him. "Who are you? Why do you care?" It was a fair question. Marcus asked himself the same thing. "My name is Marcus Whitmore. I was on the same private flight from North Carolina. Penny came to me when you wouldn't wake up. As for why I care..." He paused, surprised by the emotion in his own voice. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be a child who's terrified of losing everything." Something in his words seemed to break through Jessica's defenses. She wiped her eyes, glanced again at her sleeping daughter, and began to speak. "My husband Patrick died 2 years ago. They said he drowned, fell off his fishing boat during a storm. But Patrick was the best swimmer I ever knew. And he was always careful about safety. He had to be. He knew he had a family depending on him." Her voice cracked. His brother Travis was on the boat that night. He said Patrick had been drinking, that he slipped. But Patrick had been sober for 3 years. He wouldn't have touched alcohol on the job. "You think Travis killed him," Marcus said. "I couldn't prove it. The investigation concluded it was an accident. Travis cried at the funeral, played the devastated brother, but then he started asking about the insurance money. When he found out it went to me and Penny, he was furious. He said Patrick had promised him that money for some business venture. He tried to contest the will, but there was nothing to contest. The policy was clear." Jessica's hands were shaking now. "Last month he came to my apartment. Said he knew I was struggling, working 2 jobs, barely making rent. Offered to take Penny off my hands, said she'd have a better life with him. When I refused, he got angry, said I was being selfish, that I was ruining Penny's chances at a good future. Then he said something that made my blood run cold." "What did he say?" Marcus prompted. "He said, 'Accidents happen, Jessica. Patrick learned that. Maybe you will too.'" She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes filled with terror and determination. "I started being so careful after that. I changed our locks, varied our routine. But I never thought. The medicine was in my apartment. He must have broken in while we were in North Carolina." Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from David. "Travis Morrison booked a flight to Miami. Arrives tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Rental car reserved under his name." He showed Jessica the message. "He's coming here. He doesn't know you survived." Jessica's face went white. "He'll come for Penny. If I'm dead, he becomes her legal guardian. He'll get the insurance money, and then..." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "Then we need to be ready for him," Marcus said grimly. "But first, I need you to trust me." "Can you do that?" Jessica looked at him for a long moment. this billionaire stranger who had somehow become her daughter's protector. I don't have much choice, do I? No, Marcus admitted. But I promise you this, Travis Morrison will not touch your daughter, and he will pay for what he did to you and your husband. Across the room, Penny stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "Mommy?" Jessica's tears fell harder. "I'm here, baby. Mommy's here." But as Marcus watched the scene unfold, his mind was already working through scenarios, strategies, traps. Travis Morrison had made a fatal mistake. He'd tried to murder someone under Marcus Whitmore's protection, and Marcus had built an empire by being absolutely ruthless with his enemies. Tomorrow morning, Travis would walk into a situation he couldn't possibly anticipate. The question was, would he confess, or would Marcus need to make him break? Either way, justice was coming. The next morning arrived with the kind of brutal Florida sunshine that made everything feel too bright, too exposed. Marcus had barely slept, spending most of the night coordinating with his legal team, security personnel, and a detective named Rodriguez, who seemed far more interested in the case once Marcus's name became attached to it. Jessica was stronger now, able to sit up and eat the breakfast Marcus had arranged from a 5-star restaurant nearby. Penny sat beside her mother on the hospital bed, chattering about the cartoons playing on the television, blissfully unaware of the danger circling closer with each passing hour. "He'll go to the apartment first," Jessica said quietly, so Penny wouldn't hear. "When he finds out I'm not there, he'll check the hospitals." "Let him," Marcus replied. He was standing by the window again, watching the parking lot below. "We've set the stage perfectly. Your apartment building manager has been instructed to tell anyone who asks that you're at Miami General. The hospital receptionist has been briefed to provide your room number, but only to family members who ask specifically." "You want him to come here?" Jessica's voice rose slightly in panic. "I want him to incriminate himself. Detective Rodriguez is reviewing your husband's case file as we speak. The original investigation was sloppy. They took Travis's statement at face value, never questioned the inconsistencies. But with new evidence of attempted murder, they're willing to reopen Patrick's death." Marcus turned from the window to face her. "The detective will be in the next room with recording equipment. Travis doesn't know you're conscious. If he comes here believing you're comatose and vulnerable, he might say things, do things, that will prove his guilt. And if he doesn't, if he's smart enough to stay silent," Marcus's smile was cold, "then I have other methods. I didn't build a business empire by playing fair with people who deserve no fairness." At precisely 8:15 a.m., David sent a text. Target landed, picked up rental car, heading toward Fort Lauderdale, Jessica's apartment. The waiting was the worst part. Marcus found himself watching Penny, thinking about her innocence, her trust. She'd fallen asleep holding his hand last night. This child who barely knew him, seeking comfort in a terrifying situation. It had stirred something in Marcus he thought he'd buried years ago, a protective instinct, a desire to shield someone vulnerable from the cruelty of the world. His ex-wife, Amanda, had once accused him of being incapable of real love, of caring more about his business than about human connection. Maybe she'd been right. After his mother died and his father drank himself to death, Marcus had learned that caring about people only led to pain. Better to care about things you could control: money, power, success. But now, watching Jessica stroke her daughter's hair while explaining that everything would be okay, Marcus wondered if he'd been wrong about that too. At 9:30, David appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. "He's in the building. Just told the receptionist he's Jessica Morrison's brother-in-law, here to check on her condition. They directed him to this floor." "Everyone in position?" Marcus asked. "Detective Rodriguez is next door with audio and video equipment. 2 plainclothes officers are stationed in the hallway, posing as orderlies. Your security team is covering all exits. He's not leaving this hospital without answering for what he's done." Jessica reached for Penny. "Baby, I need you to do something very important for Mommy. Can you go with Mr. David here to get some ice cream from the cafeteria?" Penny's eyes widened with suspicion. "Is something bad going to happen?" "No, sweetheart," Jessica lied smoothly. "Mommy just needs to rest for a bit, and I want you to have a treat. You've been so brave." David extended his hand to Penny, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. As they left, Marcus saw David's other hand rest on the concealed weapon at his hip. If Travis Morrison made any wrong move toward that child, he wouldn't leave the hospital alive. "Get in the bed," Marcus instructed Jessica. "Close your eyes. We need him to think you're still unconscious." Jessica obeyed, though Marcus could see the terror in her eyes before she closed them. He positioned himself in the chair beside the bed, phone in hand, looking for all the world like a concerned friend or colleague keeping vigil. Footsteps approached in the hallway. Then the door opened. Travis Morrison was not what Marcus expected. He'd imagined a rough character, someone whose criminality showed in his face. Instead, Travis was clean-cut, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, looking like a respectable small business owner. His expression as he entered was one of perfect concern, his eyes immediately going to Jessica's still form. "Oh, God," Travis breathed, and Marcus had to admit the performance was good. Is she going to be okay? And you are?" Marcus asked, his tone neutral. "Travis Morrison. I'm her brother-in-law. I just heard about what happened, some kind of drug reaction on the plane." Travis moved closer to the bed, and Marcus noticed his eyes scanning the IV bags, the monitors, calculating. "Have the doctors said when she'll wake up?" "They're uncertain. The combination of drugs in her system was quite severe. Apparently, someone tampered with her medication." Marcus watched Travis's face carefully. There, just a flicker of something behind the concerned expression. Satisfaction? Relief? Tampered? Travis's voice was shocked, but his body language told a different story. His shoulders had relaxed slightly. "Who would do such a thing? That's what the police are trying to determine. They've been very thorough, checking her apartment, interviewing neighbors, reviewing security footage." Marcus paused deliberately. "They've found some interesting evidence." Now Travis's composure cracked slightly. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that suggests this wasn't a random act. Someone with a motive. Someone who knew where she kept her medication. Someone who had access to her apartment." Travis's face had gone pale, but he recovered quickly. "Well, I certainly hope they catch whoever did this. Jessica and I may have had our differences, but I'd never wish harm on her. She's family." He moved even closer to the bed, reaching out as if to touch Jessica's hand. That's when Jessica's eyes snapped open. "You killed Patrick," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "You killed my husband, and then you tried to kill me. All for insurance money." Travis stumbled backward, his mask of concern shattering completely. "You're awake. They said you were comatose? Dead. That's what you were hoping, wasn't it?" Jessica sat up, her voice growing stronger. "You thought you'd come here and find me gone, and then you'd take Penny, and no one would ever know what you did." "I don't know what you're talking about," Travis said, but his eyes were darting toward the door, calculating escape routes. "You're confused from the drugs." "The drugs you put in my pill bottle," Jessica interrupted. "The same way you drugged Patrick before you pushed him off that boat. He told me he felt strange that night before he left for work, dizzy, disoriented. I thought he was getting sick. But it was you, wasn't it? You needed him impaired so he couldn't fight back when you threw him overboard." "You can't prove any of this," Travis snarled, his true nature finally emerging. The concerned brother-in-law was gone, replaced by something venomous and desperate. "Patrick was a drunk who fell off a boat. You're a barely functioning single mother who had an adverse drug reaction. The courts will see exactly what I tell them to see." "Will they?" Marcus stood, his 6'2" frame suddenly seeming much larger in the small hospital room. "Because I have security footage of you entering Jessica's apartment yesterday. I have testimony from a pharmacy tech who remembers you asking detailed questions about hydrocodone 3 weeks ago. And most importantly, I have your confession, recorded on multiple devices, being reviewed by Detective Rodriguez right now in the next room." The blood drained completely from Travis's face. "You set me up." "No," Marcus said coldly. "You set yourself up the moment you decided to murder your brother and attempt to murder his widow. I simply gave you enough rope to hang yourself." Travis's hand moved toward his pocket, but before he could complete the motion, the door burst open. Detective Rodriguez entered with 2 uniformed officers, weapons drawn. "Travis Morrison, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Jessica Morrison, and suspected involvement in the death of Patrick Morrison. You have the right to remain silent." As the officers handcuffed Travis and read him his rights, the man finally broke. "She doesn't deserve that money," he screamed. "Patrick promised it to me. We were supposed to start a business together. But then he met her and everything changed. He chose her over me, his own brother. I gave him a choice that night on the boat: sign over the insurance beneficiary, or go overboard. The fool chose to jump rather than betray her. So noble, so stupid. And for what? So she could raise his brat in poverty while that money sat untouched? The confession poured out in a toxic flood, years of resentment and greed spilling over. Marcus recorded every word on his phone, backup evidence to ensure this monster never saw freedom again. As they dragged Travis from the room, still screaming about injustice and betrayal, Jessica collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing. Marcus moved to her side, uncertain what to do, uncomfortable with this level of raw emotion. "He killed Patrick," Jessica wept. "All this time, I knew something was wrong. But hearing him admit it, 'Your husband died protecting you and Penny,'" Marcus said quietly. "He was a brave man, and Travis will spend the rest of his life in prison for what he did." Jessica looked up at him, her eyes red but clear. "Thank you. I don't know why you helped us, why you cared, but thank you. You saved our lives." Marcus opened his mouth to respond with something casual, something that would maintain his emotional distance. But before he could speak, the door opened again, and Penny rushed in, David close behind. "Mommy! Mr. David said the bad man is gone forever. Is that true?" Jessica opened her arms, and Penny climbed onto the bed, hugging her mother fiercely. "Yes, baby. The bad man is gone. We're safe now. We're finally safe." Watching them, Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, a vulnerability he'd spent decades fortifying against, and he realized that everything was about to change. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the lobby of a newly renovated building in Coral Gables, watching as workers installed the final touches on what would soon become the Morrison Community Center. The space had once been an abandoned warehouse he'd purchased years ago as a tax write-off. Now, transformed with floor-to-ceiling windows, bright murals, and state-of-the-art facilities, it would serve as an after-school program and resource center for single-parent families. "You didn't have to do all this." Jessica's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to find her standing in the doorway, Penny's hand in hers. Jessica looked different than she had in that hospital room, stronger, healthier, with color in her cheeks and hope in her eyes. She'd quit both of her exhausting jobs after Marcus had offered her a position managing the community center. The salary was generous, the hours reasonable, and most importantly, she could bring Penny with her after school. "I wanted to," Marcus replied simply. It was the truth. After Travis's arrest and subsequent confession, he'd broken completely under interrogation, admitting to drugging and drowning Patrick, then attempting to kill Jessica. Marcus had found himself unable to simply walk away. He'd attended the hearings, ensured Jessica had the best legal representation for the civil suit against Travis's assets, and found himself thinking about her and Penny at odd moments during his business meetings. Penny released her mother's hand and ran to Marcus, wrapping her arms around his legs in the unself-conscious way of children. "Mr. Marcus, Mom says I can pick the color for the reading room. Can it be purple, please?" Marcus felt that now familiar warmth in his chest. "Purple it is. Though I think we should ask the designer to add some silver stars on the ceiling. What do you think?" "Like a galaxy." Penny's face lit up. "Mom, did you hear? A purple room with silver stars." "I heard, baby." Jessica smiled, but Marcus noticed the uncertainty in her eyes. "Penny, why don't you go see if the playground equipment arrived? I saw a big truck out back earlier." As Penny scampered off, Jessica approached Marcus slowly. "We need to talk." Marcus braced himself. He'd been expecting this conversation, dreading it, knowing it was inevitable. In the 3 months since the hospital, he'd inserted himself thoroughly into their lives, finding Jessica a job, enrolling Penny in an excellent private school with a full scholarship, even helping Jessica move to a secure apartment in a better neighborhood. He'd told himself it was simply about protecting an investment, about ensuring justice was served, but he knew he was lying to himself. "You've done so much for us," Jessica began, choosing her words carefully. "More than we could ever repay. But Marcus, I need to understand what this is, what we are to you. Because Penny is getting attached, and She stopped, took a breath. "I can't let her get hurt. She's already lost so much." Marcus looked at this woman who'd survived her husband's murder and an attempt on her own life, who worked 2 jobs to give her daughter a better future, who'd shown more courage in one moment than most people displayed in a lifetime. And he realized he was terrified. "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "I've spent my entire adult life avoiding exactly this kind of complication. After my divorce, I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. I built walls, Jessica. Very high, very strong walls. And now?" she asked softly. "Now I find myself thinking about a 7-year-old girl who needs help with her homework. I schedule business calls around a school play I promised to attend. I bought a building and turned it into a community center because I wanted to create something that would make a difference in your lives and the lives of families like yours." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by his inability to articulate these unfamiliar emotions. "My assistant thinks I've lost my mind. My board of directors is concerned about my focus. And they're probably right." Jessica stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something floral and inexpensive, nothing like the designer fragrances his ex-wife had favored, yet infinitely more appealing. "What do you want, Marcus? Not what you think you should want, or what makes logical sense. What do you actually want?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Marcus had built an empire by always knowing exactly what he wanted and pursuing it ruthlessly. But this was different. This was personal, messy, terrifying in its potential for both joy and devastation. "I want to be there when Penny loses her first tooth," he heard himself say. "I want to teach her to ride a bike and threaten her first boyfriend and walk her down the aisle someday. I want to come home to someone who cares more about how my day went than about my stock portfolio. I want—" He stopped, shocked by his own honesty. "I want a family. Your family, if you'll have me." Tears were streaming down Jessica's face, but she was smiling. "Marcus Whitmore, are you asking me to date you?" "I'm asking for more than that," Marcus said, surprising himself. "I know it's fast. I know it's illogical. But I'm 42 years old, Jessica. I've wasted enough time pretending I don't need anyone. I've been alone by choice, telling myself it was safer, better, more efficient. But these past 3 months with you and Penny, they've been the best of my life." Jessica laughed through her tears. "This is crazy. 3 months ago, I didn't even know you existed. Now you're talking about walking my daughter down the aisle? I told you I don't do anything halfway." Marcus reached out, gently wiping the tears from her cheeks. "But I understand if this is too much. Too soon. I can slow down. We can take our time. Do this properly." Jessica kissed him, cutting off his words. It was soft and sweet and tentative. Nothing like the calculated kisses he'd shared with women at society functions. It was real, and it terrified him. And it was perfect. When they broke apart, Jessica was blushing. "I've wanted to do that for weeks, but I was afraid. After everything you've done for us, I didn't want you to think I was using you. Or that I expected—" "Jessica," Marcus interrupted gently, "I'm a billionaire. People use me every day. I'm well aware of what that looks like." "This isn't that." "No," she agreed. "This is something else entirely. Something I wasn't looking for and definitely didn't expect. But something I want to explore, carefully, slowly, with Penny's well-being as the first priority." "Agreed. Which is why I have a proposal. A business proposal," Marcus added quickly at her raised eyebrow. "The insurance money from Patrick's policy, plus the settlement from Travis's assets, comes to approximately $400,000. That's a significant amount, but it's not generational wealth. It won't pay for Penny's college and your retirement and everything else you'll need. Marcus, I'm not taking more money from you. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an investment opportunity." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a detailed business plan his team had prepared. "You're brilliant at organizing people and resources. I've watched you coordinate the renovation of this center while managing volunteers and creating programming schedules. You have skills that are valuable. I want to invest in you building a nonprofit that establishes community centers like this one across Florida. You'd be CEO, I'd be the primary investor. It would be a legitimate business relationship with proper contracts, boards of directors, everything above board. Jessica stared at the proposal, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the projections. Marcus, this is millions of dollars of investment. I've built my fortune on recognizing good investments. You're a good investment, Jessica, but more than that, you're a good person who wants to make a difference. I have the resources to help you do that. Why wouldn't I? Before Jessica could respond, Penny's voice echoed through the building. Mom, Mr.
Marcus! The playground is here, and it's huge. And there's a slide and swings and one of those spinny things, and can I try it? Please, please, please. They found Penny practically vibrating with excitement beside a massive playground structure being assembled in the outdoor space. The workers grinned at her enthusiasm, and Marcus made a mental note to ensure they received generous bonuses. What do you think? Marcus asked Penny. Is it good enough? It's perfect. Penny threw her arms around him again, then grabbed both his hand and Jessica's, linking the three of them together. This is the best day ever. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? Marcus looked at Jessica over Penny's head, seeing his own hope and fear reflected in her eyes. They were standing at the edge of something momentous, a precipice that would require a leap of faith from both of them. Ice cream sounds perfect, Jessica said softly, squeezing both their hands. As they walked out of the building together, a makeshift family formed from tragedy and chance and choice. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine happiness. Not the satisfaction of closing a deal or the pride of building an empire, but the simple joy of belonging to something larger than himself. His phone buzzed with messages from his office. Urgent matters requiring immediate attention. Crises only he could resolve. He silenced it without looking. Those things could wait. His real life, the one he'd accidentally stumbled into on a private jet 3 months ago, was happening right now, and he wasn't going to miss a single moment of it. 6 months later, Marcus Whitmore would propose to Jessica Morrison on the beach where Patrick had once taught Penny to build sandcastles, a gesture of respect for the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together. A year after that, Marcus would adopt Penny officially, giving her the family name and the father she deserved, and every night for the rest of his life, he would be grateful to a brave little girl who'd said 5 words that changed everything. Sir, my mom didn't wake up. Because in saving Jessica and Penny Morrison, Marcus had somehow saved himself.